Welcome. I'm Nate England, the CEO of Skylink. And for about 30 minutes here is we're going to be discussing the ultimate guide to purchasing your next aircraft auxiliary power unit, better known as and simply known as APU. And there's a lot of confusion on how to source, process, chase, and trace this material. It takes a lot of your investment and your money. So we're going to get down and dirty with some critical insight on how to purchase APUs. So let's really dive right into one of the critical or in an important area we should be discussing, and really that is the demand. I want you to really think about how much is a downed aircraft costing you. Is it 10, 15, 20, depending on the aircraft, $30,000, $100,000 for missing a revenue generating flight? Or if you're an aircraft MRO, how much is it costing you to keep that project going? It's hangar time, it's additional lost revenue. Of course, you'll be billing certain hours, but it's a sunken cost and it's lost opportunity. And that's something for you to really think about. Even if you're a leaser or a supplier, really how much does chaos and AOGs and things that aren't going according to plan costing your operation? And if you have that number, that figure, it'll really help you make the right decisions going forward in purchasing your next APU. So let's first think about the demand. How much is the total MRO environment looking like over the next 3 years? And it's rather large. The total APU MRO demand through 2020 is in excess of $12.3 billion. So whether it's you, whether it's another operator, an aircraft MRO, material, whatever that might be, $12.3 billion will be spent on APUs in the next 3 years. Now, that factors in material, time, labor. It's all inclusive, but $12.3 billion. It's rather large. So with that is, how much is the APU material demand? So how much is that material going to cost over the next 3 years? And if we look down, $2.3 billion will be spent on airframe heavy maintenance, the minor, and $2.8 billion will be for major heavy maintenance. So there's a nice even split between major and minor. And for the turboprop families, is $145 million will be spent in the next 3 years on APU material alone. And that doesn't even factor in labor. That's pure material. So there's a lot of investment going to be needed over the next 3 years with APU. So with that insight, is you can really sit back and look at your operation and say, okay, this is the APU demand for us over the next 3 years, and it looks like it's the same for the overall larger environment. So just getting a general concept of that is pretty impactful. Why? Is because if you have an APS 2000 or an A320 APU that you'll need, and you know that maybe you don't have excess stock or you don't have any additional support units available to you, is if you're competing against all of these other operators who need the same material, is there is going to be a supply and demand imbalance, which we'll discuss in the sourcing side of things. Is you don't want to be in that area where you now are in need of an APU, and so does all of your other competitors. You go out to market because you're now AOG because you need to replace your APU that maybe you should have pre-planned and there's nothing available. Now you're scrambling. We've seen it on a number of occasions, and it's pretty costly to the operations who don't make those decisions way in advance. So with the sourcing let's jump into how to source your next APU. There's a lot of different ways to source, and you're probably thinking, well, yeah, I plug in a part number and I send out a mass RFQs, but au contraire, I have some tips for you to really streamline that process a little bit better, because I think at the end of the day is you care more about results, you care more about lowering turnaround times, lead times, and total cost. And if you source appropriately, you can get that done, but it has to be strategic in nature. So the first step into sourcing is really to prepare for your future removals. And you can use that demand that I showed you, and just to get a general outline of what you may be needing. But look into your internal operation. Is when are your APUs scheduled to come off aircraft? What cycle remaining do they have? Or do they have any planned maintenance checks? You know, what removals are you going to need? You really have to think about that before you go to market, before you start sourcing. Is yes, maintenance will tell you, and engineering, and that is not my forte per se, but they'll tell you when you need it. But you should start looking at your future removals before they tell you when you need it, and that becomes pretty important. So look into the data you have now, and this is just a general concept. MTBR, mean time between removals, your ERP system data, your history. Look at all of the data environment that you have available to you. Of course, everybody's talking about data analytics, but the large majority of us don't have that to us right now. So you have to do a little bit of digging, or you can just look at, if you have a large fleet, it becomes a lot harder. But if you have a small to medium-sized fleet, you can look at your total APUs now, and how they're operating, is the cycles remaining, and if there is anything needed of them in the near future. So look into the data you have now. And the next step really is, when you are looking into the data, is you don't want to just go out to market and send mass RFQs. I've seen it a number of times where 120 days prior is an operator will say, we need this APU. And they get the biddings, they get all of their biddings back, and they don't make a decision, or they stir up market. Is they say they're AOG when they're not necessarily AOG. Things happen when you send out mass RFQs. So let's say you send it out to 50. Of those 50, probably a good 5 people can really support you on that APU need. So now you have everybody asking everybody for APUs, and the demand for the APU skyrockets. And what happens when demand skyrockets and supply is low? Prices jack up. So don't send out mass RFQs. I urge you not to do that. And really, when you send out mass RFQs, there's this concept called choice overload. When you have so if you send out 50 RFQs, you have too many choices, and too many choices lead you to regret, overwhelm, anxiety, and making the wrong decision. And a great example is if you send out those 50 RFQs, and let's even say you get 50 quotes back, you're going to price jump to the lowest provider, and really out of the 50, the lowest price provider won't give you the best quality and the best service, and really they could cost you a lot more money over the long run. So be really strategic in how you send out your RFQs. It's a lot of operators, even aircraft MROs, a lot of operations might disagree with me on this, but I have seen the history, I have seen the data, and a lot of people are starting to cut the RFQ list to the appropriate people. Why? Because they are the ones who generate results. And you don't have to sort through 50 RFQs, which in itself, time is money. So with that, don't send out mass RFQs. And the next step into sourcing is, once you have that initial need, once you know what you need, once you've looked at the data, once you've determined, all right, this is how I'm going to send out my RFQs, is you really want to establish an initial conversation with your trusted APU partner. And it doesn't have to be a specific APU partner. It can be your trusted material provider, whoever that might be to you. Start having a conversation around your 3, 6, 12-month APU needs. If you have those conversations prior to your need, is their operation can begin planning for you. Is if you send out just a general RFQ and you say, I need this APU in 3 days, there's no way, unless they have stock, but not always, there's no way they can best serve you in that regard. Start having that initial conversation way in advance. The next is, to any good key relationship, to any good key sourcing strategy, is communication and trust. Let's go back to our initial example of sending out 50 RFQs, and I'm pretty sure you wouldn't do that for an APU. But of those 50, how many of them do you actually have a good communication with, but also a trusting relationship? 1, 2, 3, maybe 4. The key to purchasing your next APU is to establishing a great relationship based on trust and communication. If you don't have a good provider, material provider, start building that communication and that trust relationship 3, 6, 9, 12 months prior to you spending a heavy investment on your next APU purchase. The next step is after you've looked at the environment and you started having those conversations, is now you have to prepare financially. And this is a tricky subject, and we have a lot of, not a lot, maybe a few articles on neverforgetyourwings.com about setting up terms and how to best do that, how to best structure that. But if you have a $300,000 investment coming soon and your finance team hasn't prepared for that, 1, they could be shocked. 2, you're not going to have the cash. 3 is you're going to be in a financial standing where 30, 69 days is going to come due if you have terms with that trusted material partner, and you're going to be late. And once you're late on 300, it might even be more than that, is now your terms are lowered, and it causes tension within that relationship. And it makes it harder on you if you do need future AOGs or you do need a future APU. So you really want to prepare financially. Even have honest conversations to say, guys, we just bought 1 or 2 aircraft. Cash is a little tight, but we have an APU coming 6 months due in 6 months. Let's start discussing financially what we can do. Maybe we can discuss some extra terms, or maybe we can come up with a plan together. Again, that goes back to having that relationship that's based on trust and communication, and that even comes. It's even more important when it comes to your financials, because a lot of times you might not even know your financial standing, but it's really important that you do understand that, because then you can have those honest relationships. And when you have those honest relationships and those honest conversations, is you can really your provider can create immense value for you if they are on the same page as you. So that really goes back to the primary concept of sourcing. It's really important to build that relationship on communication and trust, and also to pre-plan your APU needs. Is don't start buying APUs when you need it. Start buying APUs right before you need it, and that is the critical point. So let's now jump to processing. So how do you process your APUs? And again, you're probably thinking just like sourcing. Well, I start negotiating, I cut a PO, and that's it. And really, there's a lot more to it. If you actually took a step back and looked at how you process your APU needs, it becomes a really daunting task between the financials, the POs, the chasing, the follow-ups, and all of the details that are kind of in that bucket. So how do you purchase your next APU? This is where there's a lot of debate, sometimes confusion, is focus on total cost over price. And you might say, Nate, you're crazy. Price is the most important thing when buying an APU, or really any material for that matter, and I would disagree wholeheartedly. Really, because what's the difference between total cost over price? And let me give you an example. Let's say you have APU 1, right? Just imagine right here, APU 1, and the price of it is $300,000. And then you have a shipping cost of $10,000. And the partner that you decided to buy from, you haven't done a lot with. You don't know them very well. So reliability is low. And when reliability is low, you may not factor this in, and this is where price doesn't come in, is they might delay shipment. They might say, at the last minute prior to shipping that you owe more money, or they might not give you all the information on trace. That becomes a really problem. So let's add a $5,000 financial risk, or even an order risk. is if you're delayed, if the quality is not right, if they cause issues, if you can't get in contact with them, if they cause an AOG. $5,000 is actually fairly low in the scheme of things of a $300,000 order. Because just imagine, if reliability is low, you prepay that $300,000 and they don't ship, you're at a significant risk. And I have seen it again. This happen. I've seen some LinkedIn posts about somebody wires $300,000 and they never get their engine. It happens. And then really think about after purchase support. Is how much service do you get after purchase? Once it ships, are they there for you, or is it just a one and done order? And there's no financial metric there, but you could add, anywhere from $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 that if you got the support after purchase, including material, it could save you a lot of time and money. So let's say the total cost for APU number 1, again right here, is $315,000. Makes sense for a purchase. Now let's go to APU number 2. Now this is your trusted material partner. This is somebody that you have a relationship with, that communicates with you extremely well and that you trust. Their price, higher, is $310,000. Okay, so higher price, if we're just going solely on price, they are not the right option. But then they manage your freight for you and they get you a shipping reduction. So their shipping cost is $8,000 less, and their reliability is high. So because their reliability is high, is now they're giving you, now you are reducing that cost by, let's say, $5,000, because you know what they say they are going to do. And just you work in an aviation environment, issues always pop up, so you know that issues pop up. So how do they handle those issues? So reliability is high, negative $5,000. And after purchase support, they give you the after purchase support that you need. They have additional material. They have installation components. They have grease, gaskets, rotables, expendables, consumables, consolidation, and they also have the 24/7 support that you need. So with that, just imagine the cost that your operation saves by consolidating. So let's say you have APU number 2 here. Let's say you have APU number 2 here, but then you also have 5 additional components that you need that you can consolidate. And we'll get more into this in a later slide. Is now you're saving on your total material cost. You're saving on shipping. You're saving on processing. You're saving on possible issues. So they're really reducing your cost. So now their total cost is $300,000 to $315,000. They're actually, when you look at total cost, APU number 2 is a lot less cost than APU number 1. But if you would have just gone on price, is you would have made that decision based on price and not cost. Whereas over the long term, is cost, the total cost would have saved your operation more money. And really you more time, or you and your team more time. So really focus on the total cost versus the price, and that's a really important concept. The next is to, as you begin processing, is you want to prepare the logistics beforehand. Where are you located? Do you have a freight forwarder that you trust, that you've used before? What's the estimated cost of that freight? Really getting an understanding of the logistics will help you not make last-minute decisions. There's nothing worse than buying $300,000 APU that you're AOG for, and you don't know how you're going to get it. Yeah, you might have a freight forwarder partner, which is great, but what does that look like? Was your freight forwarder, did you communicate with them ahead of time before you became AOG? And that's important, to prepare your logistics before the need even happens. The next one is when you're processing an order, especially an APU order, it's consolidate as much of the material as possible. And we go back to the total cost and the total price, or the price concept. When you consolidate, just for example, look at this picture here. Is you have an APU in the middle, right? You have maybe 10, 15 components that have additional rotables, expendables, and consumables in the mix. Is now just imagine if you ordered all of that material from all over the world. What does that look like? It looks costly. It's taking a lot of your time and a lot of the money. So when you can, is look back at this picture and consolidate as much as you can so it makes sense for your operation. If you consolidate, you reduce the total cost. When you reduce the total cost, your operation's happy. Next is, I briefly said this in the last slide, is purchase all the necessary accessories with your APU. So what additional rotables do you need to install the APU or expendables and consumables? Do you need anything extra for this APU installation? Are there additional rotables, expendables, consumables, grease, whatever that might, gaskets, whatever that might be? Order everything together is because, again, we go back to total cost, is you're going to drive down that total cost, but you're not only going to drive down the total cost, you're going to save so much time. So when you're processing, is you want to focus on saving total cost outside of just price. And then outsource with trust. So more than likely is a large expendable distributor isn't going to have the rotables and the APU that you need. Is you want to outsource as much of this material demand that you need to somebody you really trust, a trusted material advisor, one that can consolidate, like the picture, we'll go back to it, like the picture above, that can get you an APU with all of the accessories that you need in one fell swoop, because that helps you drive down total cost. And when processing, that's the goal. The goal is, well, one, to get the unit. That's the primary goal. But the goal isn't to get the cheapest price. It's to get the best total cost, to get the best value for your time. So with the processing is now we're going to jump to quality. You can't process and purchase an APU without knowing the quality. And there are a ton more qualified people than myself to talk to you about quality assurance, traceability, and whatnot. But this is going to be a general concept, because sometimes when purchasing an APU, at least the ones that I've been involved on, quality was after the fact, and it really needs to be discussed prior. So what do you really need? You know, are there specific cycles remaining that you have allocated that you need? You can't take anything less than that. Again, with that, supply and demand plays a role. As you can say, I need this cycles remaining, but the market only has X, so you might just be stuck. So you still have to be somewhat flexible within your operation. So cycles remaining, we just touched on that. Is how many cycles remaining do you need? Or do you have an allocated number? What's your minimum? You know, and really be honest with yourself about your minimum. Because really, with that is cycles remaining. If you're looking for, let's say, 12,000 cycles remaining, but you want it at your budget to buy it is at 1,500 cycles remaining, it's not realistic. So really be realistic on what you're looking for. The logbook, your maintenance team and your engineering team, your quality assurance team would be the best ones to look at this, but really get detailed information about the logbook and traceability. Do you need, as an operation, do you need back to birth? If you need back to birth, supply and demand comes back into play, and the aftermarket might not be able to deliver on that promise to you. You know, can you only take 120, 121 and 129? Can you not take foreign trace? Really know and give that information. Go back to the communication and the trust, is give that information to your trusted material partner, because if they have that information, then they can give you the right choices, or they can say and be honest with you and say, you know, unfortunately, I don't think this is an option, but here are my 1, 2, 3 recommendations. With traceability is your airworthiness certs. Is you have FAA and EASA and all of these other ones, CAAC. What are your airworthiness certification requirements? Is can you take FAA 8130s alone? Or do you need an FAA dual release or EASA? So really talk to your QA team and your maintenance teams on, realistically, what exactly do I need? And you probably have that information at your disposal right now. And then we go back to is you pay for what you get. Know your needs. If you have that APU that you just need it at 10,000 cycles remaining, but you're budgeting it at 1,000 cycles remaining, it's not realistic. You know what you pay for, and that is when you start having conversations with your finance team, because you've really planned ahead. You've had that conversation with your finance team, and now your budget is realistic. So you pay for what you get, always. I have a great example of this. We bought an APU, and it was about $100,000 below market. It was tested on the aircraft. It was boroscoped by an MRO, and essentially that's it. It was airworthy, but what happened is the quality was still bad, and the fuel nozzle was loose, and it caught fire. Huge mistake, incredibly costly, and it cost Skylink itself, because we made arrangements with our client, a lot of money. So for you is know what you get. If it's too good to be true, almost always it's too good to be true. Chasing. And that goes, and actually, let's take a step back. That goes back to, if you know that an average repair time for your APU is 30 days, and somebody is quoting you, we have to send it to the shop to get repaired, and it's about 5 days. Is that really realistic? So even when you think about, when you're focusing on prices, look at the lead time. Is that actually realistic? No, probably not. You probably need to factor in 30, 45 days. So if your APU is coming off in 14 days, there's nothing on the market, your vendor is quoting you 3 days, you might run into a problem. So really looking at that. The next is chasing. And this is the point where you've cut the order, you've negotiated the price, you've got the terms all lined up, and now you need to chase your order. And there's two really critical things when you're purchasing. You have the initial processing. Sourcing is important as well, but you have the processing, the negotiations, the terms, the agreement, and then the chasing. A lot of times is you'll purchase, but then forget to really chase, and then things are delayed. Or if you focus too much on chasing and purchasing gets neglected, well, then now you're not really focusing on driving down total material costs. So they both have to be weighed incredibly balanced. Is how do you chase your APU? Well, let me tell you. When in doubt, insure your asset. So first, when chasing is another great example is we sold two 747 engines, and in the freight forwarder, and this was handled by a client, the freight forwarder managed the pickup and everything, but as it left our facility, the freight forwarder forgot to tarp the engines, and it was sent via open truck to the airport. By the time it got to the client, the fan blades were damaged from debris. So when in doubt, insure your asset. And in this regard, thankfully, is they insured their asset and they got the repairs. That they were needed. So when in doubt, do some form of insurance for your asset. Now, if your supplier or your trusted material partner is right next door, probably not worth you insuring. But it is important to insure your large assets for obvious reasons. Choose a quality freight forwarder. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten emails and calls from freight forwarders that I thought they were from planet Mars. Really, I had no idea what they were talking about. They had no idea what they were talking about. Really choose a quality freight forwarder that you trust, or even your trusted material partner might have a freight forwarder or a freight service that they provide. If so, use that. Why? Because you don't have to deal with it. It just gets from point A to you in the time that is needed, that is budgeted. So if you can outsource the freight and not deal with it, it's probably it is a good use of your time if you need that additional support. But mainly is go back and build that communication and build that trust with a quality freight forwarder. That becomes really important, especially during the sourcing stage, because there's somebody that you're really going to have to rely on. And the last part of chasing is, and there's not a slide, is track its every movement. If your trusted material partner quoted you 14 days, don't wait till day 14 to follow up with them. Hopefully they've updated you on day 1, day 3, day 7, day 10. But if not, you need to take the initiative to follow up with them. So set a reminder for yourself. It can be in any technology, it can be in a notepad, but follow up with them. And then once it ships, track its every movement. So your freight forwarder should have a service where you're able to track its every destination. So if it goes to multiple destinations, you're able to track that. Why? Is because one, it's really for peace of mind. You want to know where your large asset is. You don't want it floating off in the abyss and you not know where it's at. And if you are relying on a trusted material partner to do that for you, they should update you of the status fairly often, if not every day. If it's a 14-day shipping cycle, maybe every other day, every 3 days. But if it's a 5-day transit time, you should be getting some form of an update every 1 to 2 days. And that's a pretty good benchmark for you. Don't set yourself up for an AOG situation. If you're doing all of this last minute, some of the biggest mistakes I've personally made and clients have personally made and team members have personally made is when you wait to the last minute to make decisions and to do certain things. Could you imagine if the maintenance team said, guys, we need this APU tomorrow? Well, you have to go through the sourcing, processing, and chasing steps all within a day. That becomes really complicated, and I can almost guarantee you're going to go home and look like this person and just hold your head because you're super stressed. Don't set yourself up for failure. Have conversations internally and externally and really set yourself up for success. And we go back to inventory. Inventory really plays a part on both finance, purchasing, maintenance. Inventory is costly. I mean, it is what it is. Do you need multiple APUs in inventory? Just imagine you have 2 aircraft. Do you need 4 APUs in stock? No, probably not. If we're going back to the $300,000 APU cost, you have $1.2 million of cash tied up into your shelves or your inventory. That cash, depending on your operation, can be better invested somewhere else if you have the back-end support you need. Now, if you don't have the back-end support you need, then inventory is your risk mitigation. But if you do have the support you need, then the inventory becomes a financial burden and it becomes costly. You don't want to have to go after the fact to go out and sell your inventory. You shouldn't have that much inventory. So let's kind of jump into it. The cost of inventory, if it's an operator, because there are more risks for an operator and depending where you're at in the world, it typically costs from 10 to 20% of the asset value per year. And I believe the commercial director for JetBlue, or don't coin me on this, but I believe they said that their cost, and they outsource everything, is about 20%, which is why they try to outsource as much as possible, because the more inventory you have, the more costly it's going to be. I mean, just think, let's put this into perspective. Let's say you have $1 million of inventory, and let's just say it stays idle for a year. Probably won't, but let's just say it stays idle for a year. You're spending out $200,000 for that entire year to hold that inventory. You have insurance, you have warehousing, you have rent, mortgages, leasing, tooling, shelves. Maybe depending on where you're at is theft, it's security. You have all of this cost tied up to inventory. So over time you want to reduce your inventory burden, and that includes APUs, accessories for APUs, is how can you reduce the inventory without putting yourself at risk? And that's really a great question for you to answer internally. Maybe you have a meeting against it, is how can you not invest so much in inventory, but mitigate your risk and take that to your team. Is now, if you can, is outsource your safety stock. Why? Because if you're outsourcing that reliability and you're outsourcing the inventory, is now that inventory isn't carried on your books. Is now that $1.2 million can be reinvested into your operation. Now you don't have to deal with it, as long as you have that trusted material partner that you can outsource to. If not, inventory becomes critically important. But if you do, outsourcing is a really, really great strategy. They can stock the APU. So let's say you have a need in the next 6 months for your APU, is they will have it ready when you need it. So you don't have to stock it for the next 6 months. Put that burden on them. That's their specialty. That's what they do. Your primary responsibility is to get passengers safely and to have revenue generating flights so your operation can be profitable. Or if you're an aircraft MRO, is so you can have higher throughput for your aircraft maintenance projects. Is when you're dealing with inventory, is be strategic with it. Is don't just go out to market and send out mass RFQs and start stocking left and right. Is that puts a huge burden on you and your operation. Start with repairs. Do you have unserviceable assets that you can repair? You're reinvesting back into that asset. Start there. Don't go, this is specifically for rotables, by the way, but for an APU, is if you have an additional APU that's unserviceable, repair it. Send it to the MRO, so when your other need, when your other APU comes off, is you have a repaired unit. Even better is repair and hold. Work with an MRO partner that will repair it and hold it until future needs. Perfect. You're outsourcing that repair need, but you're also outsourcing the financial the financial risk and the financial burden of that repair. Is if you need something urgent, do an exchange. Either flat rate or exchange plus cost, whatever it might be. As long as your APU isn't BER or incredibly costly, is you're still going to save money on an exchange. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it's still going to be a percent plus the repair cost, which typically is a lot less than an outright price. So exchange or do a simple loan. If your trusted material partner wants that serial number back, do a simple 30, 60-day loan. Send your unit in for repair, get that unit back, and send that loaner back to your trusted material partner. Loans can be a great option to help mitigate some of the total cost. So start with these 3 things before you go out to market and buy an APU outright. Let's focus on repairs, exchanges, and loans. And then, if none of that makes sense for your operation, then start processing a possible outright price. And that really concludes the ultimate guide to purchasing an APU. We really started with sourcing. We then went to processing. We started with demand. We went to sourcing. We went to processing. We went to quality. We went to chasing. We discussed inventory. If you line all of those up, your next APU purchase will be guaranteed to reduce your total cost and reduce your total time. And at the end of the day, that's what you're looking for. You're looking to drive results for your operation. And if you want more, please go back to neverforgetyourwings.com. We talk about so much stuff. We talk about the top tips, tricks, and trends for your aircraft maintenance material life. There's a lot of great stuff on there for you for free to really drive the results for you and your operation. And more importantly, if you just want to save time, if you just want more time in the week, if you just want to be more efficient because you want to go back to your family, because you want better personal time, because you don't want to be stressed, there's some awesome resources there for you. And please head on over to join us on our website, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. We send a lot of cool stuff. We love engaging with you all, and we would love to see you there. And just remember, a reliable partner can and will dramatically reduce your total material costs, but they may not always be the best price. So remember that and take that home. And a quick shout out to this video sponsor, Jet Fuel Premium Coffee, some of the best stuff out there. So go check it out. Thanks for watching. Cheers.